Hey everyone, I'm Ms. Mulkowski, the mathematician, and today we are going to evaluate expressions. All right, so you probably watched the previous video on evaluating expressions where we evaluated 2 plus 3 times 4. In this video, we are going to evaluate -4 divided by 2 times 5. Okay, so I already have my GEMDAS written up here, and if you need to hear more about what that means and why I write it this way, you can click here and watch the video before. So, like I said in the video before, this comes from a worksheet that I created, so in the description you will find a link where you can download that worksheet. So, this is number 5 on that worksheet, so maybe I'll just put like number 5 up here in the corner, so you can reference that there. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to evaluate this expression, but we know when we evaluate an expression, we must follow the order of operations. So again, we go through them one by one. G, grouping symbols, there aren't any, next. E, exponents, there aren't any, next. M and D, multiplication and division. Oh man, I've got both. So now this is where we have to make sure we strictly follow the rules. And the rules state that multiplication and division are on the same level, but we must move from left to right. So basically, whichever one comes first, we do first, all right? So division is first, so we are actually going to do that first, since it is first. All right, so -4 divided by 2 is just gonna be -2, okay? And then it's gonna be times 5. Okay, so this is what this equals. And now, again, very simple, because now we only have one other thing to do, and that's just -2 times 5, which is just going to be -10. Awesome. So there you go. Now, let me say this one other thing, all right? This is where a lot of the confusion happens with students, and let me explain why. The reason, now I'm going to say I know the reason why we have the order of operations, and I am not an expert in this, but this is what I think is the reason. Calculators, way back in the day, like my day, they couldn't do the fancy things that Desmos could do, for example. If you ever go onto Desmos and you want to type in a fraction, for example, like division, we could write that differently with a fraction bar, right? Desmos will actually put the fraction bar in there. When I was in middle school, we didn't have Desmos. So our calculators we couldn't see a fraction bar in our calculators. All we saw was either division, or really what I saw was something like this. Like if I wanted to show division, it would look like that, okay? And then 2 times 5, right? So the reason that this is so important that you understand the difference here is because we have to follow an order of operations, because if we're using a calculator that's not like Desmos where there's a fraction bar, you need to know, are you doing 4 divided by 2 times 5, or are you doing, another way to write this would be 4 divided by 2 times 5. So are you doing 4 divided by the quantity 2 times 5? Because that's very different than, for example, let me erase the GEMDAS here. Okay. That's very different, for example. Actually, I'm just going to get this out of the way, too. I don't want somebody coming in here and being like, what is that written for? All right. They didn't see the beginning of the video. Stay there. Okay. 4 divided by 2 times 5. Okay? So you can see the difference there. So if we are following a strict order of operations, this goes first and then that, right? But did the person writing the problem really mean that? That's a question. So that's why we say, like, if somebody means this, they're not going to write it this way, all right? They're going to either write it like this with a fraction bar, or they're going to show the parentheses, meaning, you know, order of operations says this goes first, so then it does become 4 divided by 10, okay? So that's kind of the big thing there with this problem. It's that it's kind of, I don't want to say it's outdated, but in a way, now that our calculators can do more things, and now that we can express things in a different fashion, digitally, if you will, it's kind of is a little bit outdated, but you have to keep it in mind, because if you have an older calculator, you have to understand that your calculator is programmed to follow the order of operations to a T. So if you mean this and not this, you're gonna have to type it in your calculator that way, okay? Or I think technically it'll show the slash. Most calculators do that, okay? But you have to type it in one of these two ways, right? Because you have to say, I want the 2 times 5 together in the denominator. So I guess, but technically, when we follow a strict order of operations, this is the answer. If this is what we meant, however, let's just evaluate that quickly, right? So 4 divided by, I'll take this out, 4 divided by the quantity 2 times 5, which is going to be 4 over 10, which, you know, you can write it any way you want. So we could write this as, 2 over 5, or we could say that it equals 0.4. Any of those are answers. But you can see, depending on what the creator of the problem meant, you can get 2 very different answers. However, you need to know when your teacher's testing you on the order of operations, it's a trap. Don't fall for this. Don't do this, because this is what they mean. They mean you need to do it exactly the way it's written, exactly the way that an old calculator would calculate it. Hey everyone, I'm Ms. Milkowski, the mathematician, and I hope you found that last video helpful. If you have any questions, or if there are any topics you'd like to see me cover in future videos, definitely let me know in the comments below. Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'm going to leave you with the most important piece of advice I can give you, which is when you're doing mathematics, always ask why.